As Babe Ruth, the legendary American baseball player, once said, "The future ain't what it used to be." In these challenging times when the future landscape is always changing, we value the insights of those strategists who have shaped our present and are willing to share their vision of the future. With that in mind, the Economic Times brings you a global masterclass on the next generation retail. Moderating this panel is a man voted as one of India's top 50 managers who will influence Indian business in the 21st century. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you the founder of Train, which is Trust for Retailers and Retail Associates of India. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the legendary Mr. B.S. Nagesh. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, very, very good evening. I'm really privileged to have a panel like this next to me. And this is truly global, because from that side you have somebody who understands the minds of Indian consumers as well as international consumers. And I have Rakesh, who's an Indian running an Indian business, and Ramnathan, who's an Indian who's running an international business. And you have Mr. Bakshi, who's actually selling Indian batata vadas as McDonald's Aloo Tikki burger for an international firm. And of course we have, in our true words, the head of the Kiranas of India, IGA, which is almost like the Kirana Association worldwide with 7,000 stores. So what a fantastic panel we have in front of me. Okay, but before we start off, let's understand from Rick. Rick, you have been looking at consumers all over the world, okay? Especially the future gen consumers, the youngsters, the 18 to 25, 29. Are the Indian consumers, 18, 29, or the Asian very different than what you see in US or Europe?
Well, it's really interesting. You know, we've spent a lot of time looking at the millennial generation worldwide. I think there's about 1.7 billion millennials worldwide, which we tend to define as like the 18 to 29-year-olds. And as I understand it, about 50% of Indian population is of that age group, right? What we found when we surveyed millennial consumers here in India is that the typical urban Indian consumer has much more in common with his counterparts in the United States, in the UK, in the Middle East, in any of the other markets that we surveyed, perhaps than he does even with similarly aged consumers out in the more rural parts of India, right? Because these consumers define themselves by technology. They demand instant gratification. Pretty much anything that they want to know or anything that they need is available to them instantly. So they're incredibly demanding. And the key to understanding this generation and to marketing to them, I think, is the same as it's always been. It's about customer relevancy, right?
But what about money? Do they really have money?
Well, I think that may be one of the key differences between young Indian consumers here, perhaps in some of the more mature markets that we looked at, is that they tend to live at home a little bit longer, and they're very strong influencers in household purchase decisions, but they may not be actually making the purchase themselves, right? So it presents a challenge perhaps from a data standpoint when you're trying to understand transactionally who's making the purchase and where the loyalty lies. Is it with the purchaser or is it with the influencer, which may be a young person in the household?
Let me just check from Vikram. How do you get into the minds of the Indian youngsters or Indian consumers to develop Aloo Tikki burger for $25? Is still 25 or have you raised the prices?
Still 25.
Still 25. Will it remain 25 for the next 5 years or?
Well, I don't think we can any longer afford it.
Okay, so how do you get to know them?
About the Indian consumers, more about they dil mange more. And it is true that they have limited money, but they have aspirations way beyond the amount of money they have in their pocket. And I think exactly the point that you're trying to make. So the important thing is that how do you really crack that bit in terms of identifying products that will bring them in, right? And then somewhere along the line, you would kind of upgrade them to your core product. Mm-hmm. So when we started out with our initial menu, what we found was that while that was great as far as because it was part of the international menu, but in reality it wasn't relevant to the consumer at all. He didn't understand what this was all about. So it's only when we actually brought in a product which was literally the Aloo Tikki between two buns that everything changed. One, they could understand what the product was. Two, while they understood the Aloo Tikki, but they still got our international form, and that's between the two buns. right? So that was still great for them. And so it met their needs in terms of the taste that they were thinking about, and they actually met their aspirations because they were still going into an international QSR where they were actually getting this as in their form. So I think it was a great marriage, and when you look back, we never ever thought that it would be so successful. That single product, that one single product outsells every other product 3-1.
Mark, I think, I don't know whether you've been reading the news. I'm sure you're here and you have a partner in India. This whole thing about FDI and the big dads and your dear friends, Walmart's, Carrefour, Tesco's will all come into India, and all our kiranas, there are 8 million of them, or 8 million or 12 million, I don't know. The figure is somewhere in between. They'll all be wiped off. But you're the CEO of a large organization which is looking after the interests of 7,000 small grocers. What do you think will happen in India?
Our experience around the world, be it China, be it Australia, be it in Poland, be it in Brazil, countries that we're all in, and the United States, of course, where we started in 1926, and the organization was formed in 1926 to combat the growth of chains. But we learn from them. Our store owners, the kiranas as you call them, will learn from them. They will be better. I guarantee you they'll be better. There'll be some fallout. Those that don't want to learn and those that don't want to listen to what their peers are saying will fall by the wayside. But traditionally, the grocers here in this country, they know what the shopper wants in this country. And I'm not saying that the folks that come in from outside aren't smart. They're some of the most brilliant people in the world. Walmart, Tesco, Carrefour, all of those guys. But the folks that the grocers in this country know what they want. They know what the shopper wants. They're going to know what the new shopper wants. As I've talked to several independent stores, a lot of them tell me that the people in India are not connected yet with the internet. I disagree with that. Information is available instantly on anything around the world. And that's what's changing. There's 9 million mobiles here in this country alone. The last count, there's 150 smartphones, 150 million smartphones. When the smartphones come out, this guy over here at McDonald's, they will have already placed their order on the smartphone. And they'll just walk in and they'll have a number. It won't be a pill. Yeah. It'll be the bun. But it'll already be done. Those are already in the works right now. And they will have paid for it with their phone because cash, credit cards is going to go away.
Rakesh, what do you think? You, as an Indian retailer, homegrown, born, you become big, $2 billion, $3 billion turnover. You know the Indian consumers. You created a queue in front of Big Bazaar. I mean, we don't celebrate Republic Day and Independence Day, but we celebrate the Big Bazaar Day. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Will you have all the 365 days converted into shopping days?
I think as time will go by, we are going to see consumers come and spend more and more time in the stores, and they're not going to wait for those special occasions anymore. Every day is a special day to celebrate, and we will see that happening. But I think, some parts of the big change that we are seeing, from the time that we started and to what we are seeing today, just a few years back, life was about just urban India. Life was about the first 5 or the first 15 cities in this country. But today, when you go into the class tier 2 and tier 3 towns, and there's hardly any difference which is there. Maybe there's less number of people who are capable of shopping, but in terms of awareness, in terms of the quality of fashion that they want, it's just remarkable the kind of change that we're seeing, the kind of information that people have, the kind of television that see. It's the same as what is happening in Mumbai. So are we saying the fact that the aspirations are changing or aspirations remaining? It's becoming same. And the other thing that we are seeing is the fact that you find that a lot of the migration kind of into the bigger cities is kind of slowing down significantly. People seem to be happy saying, I live in Nagpur, I'd rather stay in Nagpur, I'll live a better life. Anyway, I can enjoy everything that is there. Was so-called Mumbai's enjoyment is now available in Nagpur, or Delhi's enjoyment is now going to be available in Amritsar, etc. So you're going to see a country which is going to have retail centers getting created almost everywhere. Will it be malls? Will it be retail parks? I don't know. It completely depends upon how we will evolve.
Wonderful. Ram, you run a very large operation around the Asian market. Multiple operations, multiple formats, and you also operated in India. And I've heard you sometime, I don't know whether in public or otherwise, that if you work 15 times more in India, you deliver 1. And if you work one time, you deliver 15 times more in the Gulf. So as it goes, is life going to become more and more tougher? Because our labor laws support the unorganized and the small. Everything is only for looking like the people on the street.
I think the markets are totally different, first of all, because I think when you come to India, you actually start building the overall infrastructure in the country. Whereas like when you operate in the Middle East, there's a lot of support coming from the way of building the whole infrastructure, which are very, very amenable for big mall developments and large-scale retail, very organized retails coming in. Here, I think the work is starting ever from working with the developers, working first of all with the government in terms of getting all the required permissions and approvals, then working with the developers in terms of educating them in terms of what should be the hygiene and what should be the requirement for an organized retail operator to operate right in the market. So there's a lot of work which is generally taken for granted in a market in the Middle East have to be done from scratch here. The second thing is, I do believe that the supply chain in the country is very, very, underdeveloped. It's underdeveloped because they have not been scaled up to be able to offer large-scale economies of scale to organized developers, organized retailers. So with the result, what's happening is more and more the retailers are spending time in sort of developing the supply chain and developing the vendors to the scale and to the quality standards that is expected to be delivered by an organized retailer to a consumer. So there's a lot of work which is being done at the back end, whereas in some of the markets, the retailer spends a lot of time with the consumer facing. They invest all the time with the consumer to try and understand how we can service this customer better, how we can stock the right assortment of merchandise, how do we analyze the consumer buying habits. Whereas today we are in a stage that we are spending all the time in developing the supply chain, in developing the back ends, and also like trying to get the right mall environment for us to go and operate successfully in the malls or in the high streets. There are not many high streets, so we have to operate in the malls. And then it so happens that the time that you would have otherwise spent in understanding the consumer is today spent in building the infrastructures.
On that note, thank you very much. It's been a wonderful panel. Thank you very much for being a lovely audience. Thank you very much for all the panelists that we have. A big clap for them. Thank you. Thank you very much.